We're still on Chapter 5, Staffing. So, welcome back again to Organization and Management. Previously, we already discussed the definition and nature of staffing and also recruitment. So, right now, we're going to discuss even more about selection and training and development. Lesson 3, Selection. So again, as previously discussed, selection refers to choosing the most suitable candidate to fill the vacant job position. So the selection is done through a process which involves tests, interviews, etc. So in many companies, selection is continuous because of fast turnover of human resources to guys So resulting in vacancies that must be filled. So because of fast turnover, so meron mang nagre-resign, may na-hire. So because of that vacancies kapag may nag-resign, so kaya natin kailangan uli ng selection. Kaya sinasabi siyang continuous yung selection. So another reason for this is the review of applicants on the waiting list. So for today, for our discussion for selection, we will be discussing the process of selection and the limitation of the selection process. The selection process typically includes the following steps. First step is the establishment of the selection criteria. So, selecting human resources in an organization requires understanding of the nature and the purpose of the job position which has to be filled. So, if naaalala nyo, sa staffing, our first step really is to identify the job position or kung ano yung need na work. So, kaya dito, unang-unang step din niya is yung pag-establish nung selection criteria. So, the first step here is you must really need to understand the nature and the purpose of the job. Para kasi, mas ma-identify mo din kung ano yung mga criteria or mga skills or knowledge na kailangan para mapunan yung job position na yon. So, upon the establishing of the selection criteria, dapat we really also know ano ba talaga yung job design. So, yung job design must be based on the objective analysis of position requirements. And also, kailangan namimit niya yung organizational and individual needs. So, ibig sabihin, andun lahat ng requirements and naintindihan talaga natin so bago tayo makakapagawa ng selection criteria. And also, dapat yung job design is hindi lang niya napupunan yung needs ng organization. Rather, nilalagay mo din doon kung ano yung pwede nyo mapunan for the certain individual na mag apply sa atin. And also, another one is yung skills. So, we must consider it depending on the job position. And also, kung ano yung position na yon under the organizational hierarchy. So, for example, the position is for a manager position. So, one skill na dapat is meron na siyang proper leadership skills. 'Di ba? Since ang position na tina-target niya is manager position. Next one is requesting applicants to complete the application form. So, application forms must be completed because these provide the needed information about the applicant. So, the management will find it easier to decide whether an applicant meets the minimum requirements for experience, education, etc. if the application forms are accurately filled out by the applicant. So, for example kasi, dyan sa mga advertisements na makikita nyo, for example, sa classified ads or sa job street, is meron doon kung ano yung mga minimum requirements. Like, for example, should be a college graduate with um, business ad courses or minimum of 3 to 4 years work experience. So, that's why it is very important to ask or for the applicants to complete the application form. So for example, there's no application form, so you must make sure that the needed information is already included in your resume. So kasi dun check ng employer kung nami-meet niya ba yung minimum requirements na kailangan for that certain job position. Next one is screening by listing applicants who seem to meet the set criteria. So, 'di ba, once na nakapagpasa naman yung applicants, so ang gagawin mo naman ngayon is isi-screen mo or i-check mo isa-isa if they really meet the set criteria for the certain job description or for the certain job position. So this involves also the preparation of a short list of applicants who meet the minimum requirements of the job position to be filled. So it is done to avoid wasting time of conducting interviews with applicants who do not meet the set criteria for the job opening. So kasi for example, a lot of people pass their application forms or their resumes and then hindi naman lahat na meet ng criteria. So it will be really a waste of time if lahat yon is papadaanin mo pa sa interview and exam. So ang ginagawa ng mga companies is after pa lang na maibigay sa kanila yung resume or application form, is inisiscreen na nila kung sino yung mga nakamit nung criteria na sinet nila for that or for the certain job position. And then after that, yung mga shortlisted, sila na yung tatawagan for interview or exam. So after the screening of the applicants who met the set criteria, so the next one is another screening, but this one is screening interview to identify more promising applicants. So here, a short list of applicants is prepared. Included in the list are the applicants who will be asked to undergo formal interview by the supervisor or manager. And also, the applicants who are deemed to be the most fitted for the job opening are belong to this shorter list. So, from unang list na mga nakamit nung criteria, so ida-down mo pa siya kung sino yung mas nakakaangat or mas fitted dun sa job. So, you screen their experiences or their selective skills or their knowledge. So, this can be done, of course, through interviews and also exam. Next one is the actual interview by the supervisor or manager or panel interviewers. So through the formal interview of the most promising applicants, the other characteristics of the applicants may be revealed or be observed by the supervisor or manager or panel interviewers. So such characteristics include the applicant's self-confidence. So if makikita mo naman yun sa kausap mo if kaya niyang dalhin yung sarili niya if he or she can properly introduce herself, introduce her or his background, or to answer your question well, and also the positive or negative self-esteem niya, his or her honesty, ability to relate well with others. So if the conversation is going well, and also the positive or negative life experiences which may affect his or her job performance, among others. So, interviewers must be trained so that they will know what to look for. So, usually, itong mga nag-i-interview is sila talaga yung mas nakakaalam kung paano ba nila mas makukuha yung totoong ugali yung um, or yung attitude nung ini-interview nila. So, itong mga to, normally, they undergo training to know the proper questions to be asked. Like, for example, work-wise, they are going to ask you what are your previous experiences, if meron ka nilagay nun sa resume mo or dun sa application form, and they will also ask you some situations wherein parang mabibigla ka or masasabi mo yung parang innate reaction mo for that certain situation. So they're doing that in order to bring the attitude or the personality of the person. Sorry, that's to bring out the personality of the person. So, through this interview, we can select properly kung sino talaga yung mas appropriate for the job. Or if he or she is really suited or na-meet niya talaga yung criteria na kailangan mo. So, interviews are important in determining the qualifications of an applicant and gauging his or her ability to perform a job. So, interviews may come in different forms. So, here are the types of job interviews. First one is the structured interview. So here, the interviewer asks the applicant to answer a set of prepared questions, situational, job knowledge, job simulation, and work requirement questions. So ito yung normally na ginagawa sa mga interview wherein meron na talagang prepared questions. So like yung nabanggit ko nga kanina, yung situational or job knowledge or kung ano yung alam mo or naintindihan mo based dun sa pagbasa mo nung job description posted. So, that's structured interview. Next is unstructured interview. The interviewer has no interview guide and may ask questions freely. So, ibig sabihin, ang kinaibahan lang nito is wala siyang structure or wala siyang guide. So, kung ano yung gusto niyang itanong, itatanong niya lang. So, that's unstructured interview. Next is one-on-one interview. So, one interviewer is assigned to interview the applicant. So, ibig sabihin, isa lang yung nag-i-interview and isa lang yung applicant. So, one-on-one sila. So, under this type of interview, um, structured interview or merong prepared questions or no interview guide yung pwedeng mangyari. And lastly, panel interview. So, meaning several interviewers or a panel interviewer may conduct the interview of applicants. So, 3 to 5 interviewers take turns in asking questions. So, ibig sabihin, if hindi na siya one-on-one, so for example, hindi man ibig sabihin na marami talaga. So, pwedeng dalawa yung nag-i-interview and there's only one applicant. Or tatlo yung nag-i-interview and then there's one applicant. So, ibig sabihin, yung mga magbibigay ng questions ay mas marami kaysa dun sa one-on-one na interview. So, it can be a manager of a certain department and another manager of another department which is closely related to that department kung saan siya nag-a-apply or the head or department head. So, that's an example of panel interview. So, similarly, there are different kinds of employment tests administered to measure or test an applicant's specific skill or capacity. So here are the types of employment test. So we have intelligence test, proficiency and aptitude test, personality test, and vocational test. So for intelligence test, it is designed to measure the applicant's mental capacity, test his or her cognitive capacity, speed of thinking, and ability to see relationships in problematic situations. So, it is important to know kung ano yung ability ng isang applicant of about certain situations kasi iba-iba naman kasi yung possible na mangyari sa corporation or sa business or dun sa organization. So, you must know kung paano siya magre-react or kung ano yung capability niya about those things. Next one is proficiency and aptitude test. So this test his or her present skills and potential for learning other skills. So pwedeng skills dun sa job na ina-apply niya or communication skills, way of leadership skills. So that's under this test. So next is personality test. So, designed to reveal the applicant's personal characteristics and ability to relate with others. So, usually, meron dito yung mga situations wherein malalabas niya talaga yung personal characteristics niya. And then, vocational test, test to show the occupation best suited to an applicant. So, dito sa vocational test, meron kasing parang series of question that will lead na, for example, mas marami yung ganitong number mo or sa ganitong side yung gagawin mo for a certain situation. And then, parang doon ka na pupunta sa occupation, for example, of that relates to arts or that relates to critical thinking. So, ganun. So, dito, mas malalaman ng applicant kung saan siya mas best suited. Next one, after the interview, is you need to verify the information provided by the applicant. So this is to make sure that the applicant has not given false information about himself or herself. So that's why verification is necessary. Also, background checking must also be done to avoid the hiring of applicants with criminal record and to ascertain that he or she has good moral character. So usually there are companies that hire a certain another company or firm that do the background checking of the said applicants or of the applicants. So in this way, mache-check nila if ano ba tong applicant na to or sino ba tong applicant na to in the eyes of his or her neighbors or malalaman niya if tama ba yung sinabi niya dito siya na nakatira or if maayos ba yung character niya. So that's why verification of all the information is needed. Kasi in an organization, 'di ba? You need to select, 'di ba, this selection is a way of selecting the most appropriate person, di ba? So, kailangan, i-check mo din talaga, i-verify mo na totoo din naman yung sinasabi nila. So, for example, napakagaling nila sa interview, but nakita mo na meron silang nilagay doon na hindi naman totoo. So, parang doon is sumablay sila sa honesty. So, do you want someone that simula pa lang is nagiging dishonest na sa'yo? So, definitely not. So, kaya this verification is really necessary in selection. Next one is requesting the applicant to undergo psychological and physical examination. So, having a healthy mind and a healthy body is important for good job performance. So, hindi ka lang naman kasi tumitingin dun sa qualities or dun sa knowledge and skills um, ng isang tao, but rather yung healthy mind niya and healthy body. So, kailangan din yun sa work. That's why applicants must be requested to undergo this psychological and physical examination. Kaya meron tayong mga pre-employment physical examination wherein we undergo series of tests like um, urinalysis, blood test, checking of the sugar level or the x-ray, and parang ano siya, overall check-up or general check-up, and of course, yung psychological well-being nung applicant. So, the last step after all of the screening and the interviews and the verification or the requesting of the applicant's psychological and physical examination, so you can now inform the applicant that he or she has been chosen for the position applied for. So, under this step, Informing the applicant may be done verbally or in writing by the managers who give the final decision regarding the applicant's hiring. So, final instructions regarding the company's rules and regulations for hiring an applicant must be given in this step. So, for example, they are going to request additional requirements like your clearance from your previous job if there's any, or your government ID numbers, or the or your bank account number wherein kung saan nila ilalagay yung sweldo mo. That's other information na kakailanganin nila for your processing ng pag-hire sa'yo. And then, dito na din papasok yung signing of the contract or yung sa job offer. And then, they will also ask you to fill up some forms about the company company database files, and yeah, and about also the rules and regulations for hiring an applicant. So, dito na papasok yung steps na yan. But the selection process also has its own limitation. So, in reality, there is no one perfect way to select a firm's human resources. So, predicting performance is difficult as there is a difference between what individuals can do at present and what they will do in the future. So, this is because a person's needs and wants change. And so do an organization's climate and environment. So the fact that many selection approaches and tests have been devised is enough proof that management experts are still in the search of what could be done to improve the present selection process. So ibig sabihin, this process is not perfect since like we always say that change is the only thing constant in this world aside from taxes. So, nagbabago-bago din yung mundo, nagbabago-bago yung kailangan ng environment, nagbabago yung kailangan ng organization. So, kailangan yung pag-way of selecting people for your organization is nagbabago din or dapat i-improve din. So that's why ito yung limitation nung selection process that we have currently. And that's lesson 3, selection. Lesson 4, training and development. So both training and development are essential to achieve success in today's organizations. So in order to have an edge over their rival organizations, managers must see to it that their human resources have the necessary knowledge and expertise. So that's why training and development work toward this end by providing continuous learning activities and opportunities. So, 'di ba, in the selection process, you're selecting them because parang they are one of the best. Parang ganon. So, if nasa sayo na sila, so kailangan i-continue mo yon na nandun sila sa best phase of themselves. Kaya dapat meron talagang training and development to improve them more, to improve their competence, and also at the same time to motivate them. And also for them to reach the top and keep on improving their skills and their knowledges. And hindi lang naman yon for your employees but also for your organization. Since, di ba nga, human resource is one of the most important resource of the organization to be able to achieve the organization's goals and objectives. So, for training and development, we're going to discuss the typical scope of training. So, kung ano-ano ba yung procedures na fina-follow dito sa training. So, first is conducting the training needs assessment. So, training needs assessment must be done systematically in order to ascertain if there really is a need for training. So, kailangan i-check if kailangan ba talaga nung training. So, managers must first try to observe the business condition and the economic or strategic and technological changes that are happening in the organization's environment before proceeding to the analysis of the organization's or the tasks or the persons or individuals, as all these are determinants of training types required for the maintenance of the firm's stability. So, ibig sabihin, if there is a visible or much needed thing that to be known by the employees, like for example there's a big change on a certain technology that relates in our business, so kailangan nung training for that, wherein kailangan din nilang i-assess if hindi naman siya masyadong nakakaapekto dun sa work, and then ibig sabihin hindi din naman super needed nung training na yon. So, examples of organization analysis include the analysis of effects of downsizing, branching out, conflicts with rival companies, and others that may require training or retraining of employees. Aside from this, pwede din na about your certain fields. Like, for example, in accounting, if there is new accounting policies or there is new tax laws, so, mas maganda na magkonda ka din ng training for your employees to be updated. Next is designing the training program. So this phase involves stating the instructional objectives that describe the knowledge, skills, and attitudes that must be acquired or enhanced to be able to perform well. So in short, these are performance-centered objectives that must be aligned with the firm's objectives. So another thing to be considered is trainee readiness and motivation. So this refers to the trainee's background knowledge and experience so that the training to be given to them will not go to waste. Like, since, for example, there's a certain person na bago siya for this certain type of engagement. So, yung training na i-design mo must cater the need kung bakit for that certain engagement. So for example, quick background pa lang siya for that, or yung mga simple steps since bago pa lang. But for example, yung mga trainee is alam na nila yung mga twists and turns, and then ano na yung kailangan mong i-design na program. So, dapat mas enhanced or mas deepen yung kailangan na i-design mo na training. Also, for example naman, there is certain training program na you will do for staff level. So, the training program for the staff level is a lot different from the training program for the manager level. Like, for example, ang itatakal nyo for the training program for managers is for leadership. So, 'di ba, yung ganong training program, hindi naman angkop for the staff level. So, iba naman yung sa staff level. So, kaya nagkakaroon ng um, back kung ano yung kailangang objective or kung para kanino yung training. And also, different learning principles like using modeling, feedback and reinforcement, massed versus distributed learning, and others influence the training design's effectiveness. Next is implementing the training program. So, various types of training program implementation include on-the-job training, apprenticeship training, classroom instruction, audiovisual method, simulation method, or e-learning. So, dun sa implementation na, meron tayong iba't ibang klaseng kind of training program. Tulad ng sa mga students, so OJT or on-the-job training, or yung mga parang mayroong classroom na instruction, or itong very popular right now is e-learning, wherein ang mga training natin is we can watch it through YouTube or different other platforms. So that's the way of implementing the training program. So next, after the implementation of the training, it is very usual to ask for the feedback. So next one is the evaluation of the training. So the positive effects of the training program may be seen by assessing the participants' reactions, their acquired learnings, and their behavior after completing the said training. So the effects of training may also be reflected by measuring the return on investment or through the benefits reaped by the organization, which were about by their training investment. So, dito sa pag-evaluate ng training that was implemented, so, magkakaroon ng feedback based dun sa, of course, sa sinasabi nung trainee. Like, merong kunyaring feedback form na ipapasagutan kung ano yung mga sa tingin niya is the strength of that training program or kung saan nagkulang or if the speaker is really knowledgeable about the training or the topic discussed in the training or kung ano yung masasabi nila about the whole training program if that suffice the objective of the said training. And also, makikita din yun ng organization doon naman sa ROI or parang return on investment. Kasi ito namang training is, of course, expense siya kasi may mga expenses ka for this training. Like, for example, if magte-train ka, gagastos ka for the speaker or gagastos ka for their food. So, kailangan, of course, sa organization, meron ding balik yon. So, makikita yon through the person or the employees na umattend nung training. So, if makikita natin na nag-improve, for example, yung leadership skills nila or communication skills or kung ano yung ini-aim ng training na pinuntahan nila. Then, last one is the employee development. So, di ba, this training is really for the employee's development or his or her learning. So developing employees is part of an organization's career management program, and its goal is to match the individual's development needs and the needs of the organization. Kasi nga 'di ba, there are changes that's happening in the world like economically, politically, technologically. So yung need ng organization tumataas din. So in order for the individuals under the organization to meet that. So, kaya nagkakaroon din ng employee development. So, a way of developing employees is through these trainings and e-learnings or other things. So, the individual employee must know himself or herself well, identify his or her own knowledge, skills, abilities, kung ano yung values niya, interest, so that he or she could also identify the career pathway that he or she would like to take. 'Di ba we discussed earlier about staffing na in staffing hindi lang siya basta about sa mga human resources or yung sa pagkuha ng human resources or pag-hire, but also for the career development of those individuals na i-hire mo or employees mo. So, kailangan, 'di ba, nabanggit din natin kanina na meron tayong mga ways kung paano natin made-develop yung career nung employees natin. And although, 'di ba, he or she is encouraged to take responsibility for his or her own career, the organization must, at regular intervals, provide him or her with the results of his or her performance evaluations and the organization's plans or direction that may be related to his or her own career plans. So, this scheme establishes a favorable career development climate for him or her, which may lead, ultimately, to the blending of his or her career development goals with the organizational goals. So, tong training and development is very vital din sa isang organization kasi in order to achieve your organizational goals and objectives, is kailangan sabay-sabay din na nade-develop. Like for example, your company resources, and one of the most important company resources is the human resources. So, kailangan meron ding development sa mga employees mo. So, parang ano yan eh, on the way up, dapat walang maiiwan. So, dapat kasama lahat, pati yung mga employees mo. So, that's the reason behind kung bakit pinaglalaanan talaga ng panahon, ng resources, ng pera, yung training and development of the employees in any organizations. So, that's lesson 4, training and development. So again, to wrap this up, for this week, we already discussed the definition and nature of staffing, the recruitment, selection, training, and development. So next week, we will be discussing the remaining topics under staffing, which is the compensation or wages and performance evaluation or appraisal, the employee relations, the employee movements, and the reward systems. So again, last, if you have any question regarding our lesson for today or any concern, so feel free to message me. So thank you, class. God bless and be safe always.